We're going to be working on the 23 WRX. I have a lovely Perrin oil cooler set up right here that we're going to be installing on the car. I have noticed somehow FAs have an actual oil temp sensor in them compared to like EJs, which I find funny, so you can actually monitor your oil temperatures. And I've noticed that oil temperatures on these FAs get up there pretty quickly. I've seen oil temps as high as like 235 when I'm dogging on this car a little bit. So we're gonna try to control that a little bit more by bringing oil temps down. Now I personally use 5W30 in this car. Subaru does call for 020, so that is going to change temperatures a little bit, but the install itself doesn't look too bad. Now the nice thing about doing oil cooler kits on a car that like this is it comes with pre-made lines, pre-made brackets, everything like that, as opposed to something like this where you got to make all of your lines, make all of your brackets, and do all that fun stuff. So this should be a walk in the park. Over here on the table we have our oil cooler core, which this thing is thick, like thick. Like, I am impressed with how thick that core is. We've got our spacer adapter here, our thermostatic switch, which I want to say it's a MoCal, and if it is a MoCal, so it's a MoCal thermostatic switch. That should open at 185 degrees Fahrenheit. We've got our instructions, our hardware, some fittings, some brackets, and then our pre-made oil lines, which these are actually some pretty nice oil lines. They do have heat sleeve on them as well. So this should be pretty chill. Like I said, I grabbed another quart of oil and some brake clean to be able to clean things up. So ideally, I'd say let's start with the instructions, but knowing me, I'm not. Let's just jump to taking the bumper off. If you don't know how to take the bumper off on one of these, there is a series of clips and 10mm bolts that go across the top of this. There are some clips down here in the fender well, and then on top of that, there are some that run along the bottom. So let's start things off. We'll get our bumper off of here. I know we're gonna have to take our front mount intercooler core off also, so we can pull that off, and then we can start doing this install. Go ahead and pull off this air dam and then the front mount. With our bumper and our front mount out of the way, we have plenty of room now to be able to get our oil cooler in here. I'm not entirely sure where the oil cooler lines are gonna go yet, but I have a feeling they're gonna go up underneath the headlight and kind of like maybe poke out somewhere over there. They do say to lose the outer battery tray and all this stuff like that, but they also told me to do the same thing when I installed my front mount, and I didn't have to, so I'm not going to if I don't have to. So I'm gonna leave that in for now. If I finally need to have to remove it, I will. So at this point in our instructions, we are now at the point where it says, remove oil filter from engine. If the car is completely cooled, no oil will spill out. This filter may need to be reused if you're not doing a full oil change. I'm not doing a full oil change, but I did bring a brand new filter with me because I don't think I'm gonna be able to get that thing off without damaging it. Remove large center oil feed pipe using 24mm deep socket. So with this oil cooler, we are going to be losing the stock one. Now, a lot of people are okay with that because these stock oil coolers also act as oil warmers. They will help bring the oil up to temperature more on a cool day, but they will also lack in cooling the oil on a hot day when the coolant is already hot. So we are going to be losing that. I believe it loops these two coolant lines back into each other, so it shouldn't be too big of a deal. So we'll go ahead and get our oil filter off, get the center nut out of there, and then I believe it's gonna have us loop those lines and remove it. If I don't skip pages. Maybe, I don't know, we'll figure it out. Okay, I can reuse this filter if I would like to. I do have a brand new one. No oil should spill out. Center nut is removed. What would you like next, Mr. Perrin? Next few steps should be done quickly to reduce the amount of coolant lost. Prepare to bypass OEM cooler. So, okay, I know what we're doing. So there's a coolant clamp here and a coolant clamp here. I wish they would have said this prior to me unbolting this because it would have been easier, but it's whatever. So I have some clamps that we can put on these coolant lines to bypass or to minimize how much coolant we actually spill. They do give us this fitting here, which is the bypass fitting. So it's gonna connect the two hoses. I think they'll just route somewhere over here. I'm not sure yet. Yeah, they do. They route right along the oil cap over here. So I'm gonna go ahead and put our clamps on here to minimize how much coolant we do actually lose. So I'll put the smaller of my clamps right here. You do have coolant inside of this. So I think I might pick this up a little bit to be able to get coolant away from the engine oil to minimize how much actually goes everywhere. Because if we can minimize that and we don't lose a whole bunch of oil inside of the oil filter housing, that would be ideal. Like I said, I can already see coolant coming out. I'm gonna grab a second rag. See, there it goes, there it goes. Woo, coolant everywhere. So we have our coolant lines bypassed here. You guys can see they come up right here, goes to that adapter provided by Perrin, goes into the other hose, and goes back down into the block. We have our one fitting in right here. So now Perrin wants us to remove these brackets here. This black one, they want us to cut it down a little bit. So it looks like we're gonna be doing a little bit of work. These bolts don't look fun to get out, so we'll see how long it takes me. I see a 12 and a 12 there for this bracket, and then that one should come out. This one, it looks like it has 3 bracket holes, 1, 2, and 3. Then we'll do a trim job there, and then I think at that point we are good to start routing lines for the oil cooler. If you don't know the double wrench trick, man, it comes in clutch. Nope, definitely a 12. Okay, I dropped it. There it is. I'll hit it with a flap disc real quick just to clean it up. I feel like since it's like cut down now, it should be easier to go back in, right? Maybe I'm just crazy. We are not in our home right now. We're close to our home, but not in our home. There we go, now we're in our home. Never mind, I'm not starting with that one. No! That bracket, I feel like, was arguably the worst part of the install, mainly for where the bolt locations are. The stock one, you've got one right here before you cut it. Super easy. This one, not bad at all. The one that sucks is the one that's down there. And getting it on and off, I feel like if I had the battery out, it might have made it a little bit easier, but what was getting in the way was this engine harness right here. So now we've got all that done. Hopefully, from here on out, it's all chill and relatively fun, which it looks like it is, because it looks like we're doing the Perrin oil cooler now. So we're gonna go ahead and torque that guy down to 25 foot-pounds, install Perrin oil filter spacer, rubber seal down towards the engine, install thermostat housing on top of filter, making sure to place rubber seal toward Perrin spacer and engine. Easy. You guys are gonna yell at me, but all of my big belittlers are at the shop for my torque wrench, so I'm just gonna have to do this by hand, so don't be like me. Click, look at that, 25 foot-pounds right there. Now we'll take our spacer, it should go right there. We'll take this guy, seal side down, like so. I might grab a dab of like oil or something to lube on, it'll be fine. Then we have this guy that goes down, and that should center it. So we're only gonna go hand tight on this right now, so that way we can kind of orientate the fittings for where we need. So let's go hand tight so we can still spin it. Cars that are using or will be using in the future a front-mounted intercooler, cut a large hole in the radiator support as shown. Is that metal? You want me to cut a piece in the metal? Now, don't get me wrong, I like the guys at Perrin, I like the stuff they make, but sometimes I feel like it's only like 30%, like it's 90% thought out and complete. Like a stencil for this, even just included in the instructions would be nice. Some better material to be able to like cover up these edges would be nice too. Like this will be fine, but it's like, I just feel like it's not always 100% thought out, if that makes sense. But our holes cut for our lines to be able to fit through there, that honestly was not fun at all. Go ahead and get the torque core tossed on, and then I'll show you guys where we cut and all that stuff. So I got our brackets on here. We got the L bracket with the taller leg on the driver's side and this weird L-shaped one over here on this side. So I believe these are just gonna kind of screw in to these pre-existing holes right here that would otherwise have been used for the OEM transmission cooler. which I was a little worried about only using 2 mounting holes, but after feeling the support that they're on, it honestly it does feel pretty strong, so I'm not stressing it too much. It's a nice little oil cooler setup. It's just, like I said, sometimes I feel like it's not always 100% thought out from Perrin. Oh yeah, dude, that thing feels solid. That's the one nice thing about being able to build your own oil cooler is you get the freedom to be able to put lines and things like that wherever you want. So we have our core installed right there. You guys can see the weird 45-degree bracket, the 90-degree bracket right there. Sits pretty nice. Now for the hole over here, this does suck. If you don't have like a way to cut through metal, you're gonna have to figure something out. I would probably just build your own lines at that point and figure something else out. But I mean, don't get me wrong, it works. But like I said, sometimes I feel like Perrin's stuff is only about 90% thought out. Like I said, a stencil or something could have made this a lot cleaner and better looking and a better material for this. This is just so stiff that even with trying to like trim it down, it just didn't want to work. So I added a little bit of foam in there. It should be all right. So at this point, we're ready to toss our lines on to go from here, go through our hole here, up behind the headlight, come out, and I believe they're going to like right there. So hopefully at this point, it should be pretty easy. I'm hoping. I thought this whole install would be easy, but. So for oil lines, they give us 2 identical lines. So it doesn't really matter which one you start with. The ones with the 45-degree will be on this side. So I think just to make life a little bit easier so I don't have to fanoodle as much hose through, I'll stick the 45-degree end through first. Maybe I should start with the one that's gonna suck. No, I'll do the one that sucks more second. I'll save myself the pain for later. Thankfully, these are swivel fittings, so it makes it a little bit nicer. How do they have this? It's like in this weird loop. Oh God, I don't think it's supposed to bend like that. Like I can feel the hose is kinked right there. After a lot of fanoodling, I finally have it in an orientation where it doesn't want to kink itself, but I would still, honestly, I don't think I'd recommend this kit to you guys. With what you gotta do, like you gotta cut up a lot of your frame right here if you wanna run it this way. I saw another channel who ran it back behind here, but for 90, I feel like for most of us, when you get instructions and you don't know what you're doing, or you're doing like an install for the first time, you tend to follow the instructions, and it's just, you know, I genuinely think it just could have been done and thought out a lot better. I just don't think I'd recommend it. These lines just naturally want to kink themselves right here. If you just ran a straight fitting off of that, it would be so much more of a natural bend where it wouldn't want to kink itself. So I don't know, that's just my 2 cents on it. Some of you might think I'm wrong or dumb or anything like that. You can call me whatever you want, but I don't like this bend that this has going on. So it'll be all right. We're gonna leave them loose. We're gonna jump up into the engine bay and hook up the other side to the oil cooler. And then I think it's just reinstalling everything. So with that, we have our oil cooler installed. We have our lines coming up here. I need to cut a couple of these zip ties still. Wrap them behind the intercooler piping going down. Zip tied to the washer tank as per Perrin's instructions. Going down through that hole that we cut down there up to our oil cooler here. Now before we do anything else, I need to kind of clear these tools out of the engine bay. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna hold the gas pedal down, full throttle, and we're gonna crank the car over, and what that's gonna do is it's gonna build oil pressure. After we've done that a couple times, we're gonna come up, check our fittings, make sure nothing's leaking. If nothing's leaking, we're gonna start the car for about 10 to 15 seconds, then shut it off, check for leaks one more time, check our oil, add more oil as needed, then we're gonna let the car run for about 5 to 10 minutes just to make sure we have no leaks. If there's no leaks, then we're gonna put the bumper back on here, put our keys right there, and go accessory mode. I'm gonna hold the throttle 100%, clutch all the way in, and we're just gonna crank it. We're gonna do it again. Clutch out, gas pedal out. I don't anticipate we're gonna have any, but you know, it's good to check. I'm not seeing any so far. I don't see any in our lines there, so I think we are going to be good to start this up for about 10 to 15 seconds. I am going to open door because it's going to be quite loud. 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I don't anticipate we have any oil leak, but we check. We don't want oil leak. I see no oil leaking from there. I see no oil leaking from there. I see no oil leaking there and no oil leaking there. So let's check our oil. Check our oil. Not over there. We'll check our oil, add more oil as needed, because I know we're gonna need to add more. Not a crazy amount more, but we do need to add more. After we add a little bit more oil in, we're gonna let it run for about 5 minutes. Shut it off, check oil again, as the oil cooler fills up. So I'm gonna pop that guy off. I don't have my funnel here, so it's gonna kind of be a little bit messy. To about 90, so let it continue to idle for a little bit longer. Just kind of monitor everything. It looks good. Oil cooler definitely looks good up here. So everything's looking good so far. I'm not seeing any oil leaks. We're up to about 140 degrees. Everything looks good off of the cooler here, or the sandwich plate there. Everything off the cooler side looks good as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw the shroud back on and start throwing the bumper on as well, because that's probably gonna take me a good 15-20 minutes, because that bumper doesn't always like to go on. So we're looking pretty solid. Pretty happy with it so far, except for doing all the cutting and all the other not so fun stuff we had to do. But the overall result seems to be doing pretty good. So I just got back from taking the WRX on its first drive with the oil cooler. Oil temps look beautiful. They're not really going above, just like beating on it around town. It's not really going above like 202, 207 degrees, so like in between there, which is way lower than what we were at before. Your oil, keep in mind, your oil does still need to get hot so that way it can evaporate off any moisture, but just from the little bit of driving I've done, everything seems great. I did have one small oil leak that I just fixed. That was off of the AN fitting right here. We didn't start seeing any smoke or any oil leaking until I went out and drove on it a little bit and the fitting was a little bit loose. So I got that tightened up. Should be all good to go now. So overall, super happy with the oil cooler setup. A little sneak peek, the new wheels for the RX-7 and the wheels going on the STI. Ooh, those look beautiful. So do these. RX-7 is gonna look so good on these. 275s on one, 255s on the other. It'll be great. So I'll link that oil cooler down below. That still wouldn't be my first. I don't know how many oil cooler kits are out there for 2022 plus WRXs yet, but if there's other ones where you don't have to cut up the frame and you don't have to do all this other weird stuff, I would definitely suggest those ones, but I'll leave that up to you guys. So that's all I got for you guys on this one. Like I said, I'll link that oil cooler down below. I wouldn't rank it as like a beginner or entry-level modification, which a lot of people who own these cars are kind of in that beginner to intermediate level. So I'll link it down below. I'll link down a couple other options if I can find them. So with that, that's all I got for you guys on this one. If you like the video, you know what to do. Go hit that like button. Turn it black, blue, green, yellow, purple, silver sign, whatever color it turns for you. And if you dislike it, feel free to dislike it. But with that, I will catch you guys in the next one. So peace out, homies.